Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our ceremony in 5 minutes. In order to preserve the dignity of the solemn ceremony, please ensure that all phones, pagers, and watches with hourly chimes are set to silent. The streaming online broadcast is brought to you by the National Park Service. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patricia Brown, and I am the Chief of Business Services and Administration at the World War II Valor in the Pacific National Monument. Today's Master of Ceremonies is Lieutenant Colonel Robert Sandla, U.S. Army retired. Mr. Sandla is a dedicated, distinguished graduate from the U.S. Army Artillery Officer Candidate School and a graduate of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. He saw combat in Korea and Vietnam, receiving the Bronze Star, Combat Infantry Badge, and Parachutist Badge. During his more than 20 years of service, Mr. Sandla is a 42-year Hawaii resident and has hosted Hawaii Public Radio's Business of the Arts program for the past 5 years. I present to you Robert Sandla.
Good morning, and thank you, Patty, and thank you, everybody, for being here, of course. Welcome again to today's Joint National Park Service United States Navy Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day ceremony. As Patty said, I'm Bob Sandla, and it's truly an honor for me to serve again as today's Master of Ceremonies. On September 2nd, 1945, at 9 a.m. Tokyo time, on the deck of the USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay, the instrument of surrender ending World War II was signed. 70 years later, on September 2nd, 2015, a ceremony was held, again on the deck of the USS Missouri, but this time not in Tokyo Bay, but here at Pearl Harbor. That ceremony celebrated the original signing event, which began a pathway to reconciliation. Pathway to reconciliation, from engagement to peace, is our theme today as we gather to remember what happened here 74 years ago. The visible evidence of the attack is represented by the Arizona Memorial, which is over my shoulder, and that sits across the hull of the USS Arizona. That hull contains the sacred remains of many of its crew. And directly in front of us, we have the symbol of the beginning of our nation's participation in World War II, and a little to your left, my right, the USS Missouri, the actual site of the formal end of the war. It can be said that the pathway to reconciliation began on the deck of a U.S. battleship, and isn't that rather ironic? Reconciliation, a lovely word which can be defined thusly: to restore friendship or harmony, or the act of causing two people or groups to become friendly after an argument or disagreement. Well, that was some kind of argument and some disagreement. Nevertheless, both sides began the lengthy and still ongoing process. History will judge its success. Now let's go back to the beginning on that beautiful Sunday morning, December 7th, 74 years ago. It was in 1941. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, a Japanese naval carrier task force launched a surprise air attack on airfields and naval facilities located on the island of Oahu. Their primary target, the ships of the Pacific Fleet located here at Pearl Harbor. Then as now, Pearl Harbor was of vital strategic importance to the defense of our nation. Today, our servicemen and women stationed in Hawaii continue the legacy of honor, courage, and commitment of those who served before and who witnessed the terrible morning of December 7, 1941. At the end of the attack, 21 vessels were either sunk or severely damaged. 323 U.S. Army and Navy planes had been damaged or destroyed, and nearly 2,400 Americans were killed. This morning, we are gathered to remember and to pay tribute to all those who died in that infamous attack 74 years ago today, and to recognize that their sacrifices were not in vain, but led to a pathway to reconciliation and peace. And will the guests please rise as able for the arrival of the official party? The official party for today's ceremony includes Ms. Jacqueline Ashwell, Superintendent, World War II, Valor in the Pacific National Monument, National Park Service. Professor David Kennedy, professor at Stanford University, and our keynote speaker for today's ceremony. Rear Admiral John Fuller, Commander, Navy Region Hawaii, and Naval Surface Group Middle Pacific. And Admiral Harry B. Harris, Commander, U.S. Pacific Command. Please be seated. In the Hawaiian culture, the religious leader or spiritual advisor is known as a kahu. Today, we are pleased to have for our invocation a Hawaiian blessing offered by Kahu Kauila Clark. Kahu Clark.
We blow the pu to open up the vibrations to the universe, to honor Io. Io was the creator that the Hawaiians honored. We come today to honor in aloha. And given by our kupuna, the acronym of aloha is akahai, the first day, akahai, meaning compassion, kindness, and disregard to judgment. The L is lokahi, meaning balance and unity. The O is oluolu, meaning agreeable. The H is ha'aha'a, which is humility. And the last A is ahonui, which is patience and perseverance. And these are all the characteristics of aloha that we exercise every day. And this is the blessing that we give today, especially to our survivors, and to our World War II veterans, and to all who are here. We also honor Ka'apahau, Mai Aumakua, that is the shark guardian of Pearl Harbor. And so with that, we'll go ahead and do the pikai and the blessing. If all of you will rise, and we believe in rising because you are the connection between the heavens and earth. And so your fontanelle is your spiritual navel that connects us to the heavens and makes the earth and the heaven as one. So we come together in oneness. Na una I ka hale ka lihua, ke ia la, ke ia pu, ke ia laula, ia la, ia la, ia la, Eloe, Eloe, Eloe. And the chant simply says, we the flowers of Hawaii, we the people of Hawaii, with our fragrance of aloha, we ask for aloha in the day, we ask for aloha in the evening, but we especially ask for aloha at the dawn, because aloha is the gift that the Creator gave us so that we could unify as His children here on earth. And to that, we say mahalo i'o. You may be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is customary on December 7th that we observe a moment of silence at 7:55 to commemorate the beginning of the attacks on Pearl Harbor. At right about now, you will hear the USS Preble sound her ship's whistle, and please join me at that time in bowing our heads for a moment of silence to remember those who courageously fought and those who died here on December 7th, 1941. USS Preble recently returned from an independent deployment to the Western Pacific Ocean. While deployed, Preble conducted various theater security operations and goodwill activities with partner nations. It participated in Northern Patrol, Talisman Sabre, cooperation afloat readiness and training in Indonesia, South China Sea Patrol, and in East China Sea Patrol, building partnerships to increase stability in the Completing the moment of silence, you just heard F-22 Raptors from the 199th and 19th Fighter Squadrons, known as the Hawaiian Raptors, executing a formation in honor of those who gave their lives in defense of the country here 74 years ago today. Please rise for morning colors and the singing of our national anthem and our state song by Melamai Kapu'u Waimai Choir. Bugler, sound attention. Color guard, parade the colors. Please remain standing for the singing of Hawaii's state song, Hawaii Pono'i. Everyone, please be seated. Thank you. Great job, choir. Well, how about a hand for the choir? They did a great job. It is customary for ships passing the USS Arizona Memorial to pay their respects by rendering honors. And approaching, over my shoulder here, over that way, you will see the guided missile destroyer USS Preble, commanded by Commander Jeffrey I. Heames of Sierra Vista, Arizona. USS Preble is an Arleigh Burke class of guided missile destroyer and is the 6th U.S. Navy ship named after Commander Edward Preble. She was commissioned at the World Trade Center Pier in Boston, Massachusetts on November 9, 2002. Today, in addition to rendering honors to USS Arizona Memorial, the USS Preble will also render honors to the Pearl Harbor survivors who have gathered with us today. Ray Emery is ready to return honors as a representative for all Pearl Harbor survivors. Ray was aboard the USS Honolulu on Sunday, December 7, 1941, and during the attack, he rushed to a machine gun and began firing on the attacking planes. During his wartime service, he participated in numerous battles, campaigns, and engagements. The Aleutians, Solomon Islands, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Saipan, Guam, Leyte Gulf, Lingayen Gulf, and Iwo Jima. Former Navy Chief Ray Emery has been actively engaged for 25 years, more than that, working to identify the previously unidentified remains of service members killed in the Pacific War. Accompanying Mr. Emery today is Master Gunnery Sergeant Donald McNeil, United States Marine Corps retired. Don joined the Marine Corps in April 1964 and served 2 tours in Vietnam. He retired after 30 years service in 1994 and is currently the lead security officer with the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration. All Pearl Harbor survivors and other World War II veterans are invited to stand as able. Chief Emery and Master Gunnery Sergeant McNeil will now return the salute to the USS Preble. Hand salute. Carry on. Pearl Harbor survivors and World War II veterans, please be seated. I'd like to thank, and we'd like to thank, the USS Preble and the 199th and 19th Fighter Squadrons for participating in today's ceremony. For the past 34 years, the Japan Religious Committee for World Federation has offered a prayer for peace on this occasion, and we are honored to have them once again as part of this ceremony. Reverend Ryujo Fujita will offer the prayer, followed by the English translation given by Ms. Maya Perry. Reverend Fujita, Ms. Perry.
私たち世界連邦日本宗教委員会は1982年5月29日から30日ニューヨークの聖ヨハネ大聖堂で開かれた日米宗教者会議に参加し、その日とここパールハーバーに立ち寄り慰霊の祈りを捧げさせていただきました。次来、今回で34回目を迎えることとなった次第であります。本年は私たち日本人にとって終戦70年という節目の年であり、改めて戦争と平和について考察を深めるべき時期が巡ってきているように思われます。そして今、この場所にこうして互いに集いより平和の祈りを共に捧げる姿を目の当たりにするとき、一度は敵味方に分かれた者同士であっても、時が移り世が変われば古くから親しい友人や仲睦まじい同胞のように互いに相手を思いやり、親愛の情を交わし合うことができるようになることを世界に向け誇りと確信を持って表明することができるのであります。世界の平和が刻一刻と脅かされつつあるように見受けられる今日、私たちは恒久平和の実現という人類永遠の課題にどのように向き合っていけばよいのか、いよいよ深く思いをいたさなければなりません。今や平和とは戦争をしないことであるという考え方にとどまるものではなく、平和そのものをより積極的な文脈の中に位置づける必要があるのではないでしょうか。例えば私たち人類も他のすべての生き物と同様に大自然の中で生かされているという友生きの精神、すなわち共存共栄相互敬愛の精神こそ 世界を救う一つの道を示しているのではないかと考えられるのです。私たちは先人から受け継いできた英知を結集し、一日も早い真の世界平和と人類の幸福を実現するために、宗教者、信仰者として一人一人が真剣に持てる力のすべてを捧げることをここに誓います。ここに集う皆様と共に祈りましょう。世界が本当に平和になり、すべての人々が幸せでありますように。この地球を一つの家として生きとし生ける者が共に生き、慈しみと愛と誠に満ちた明るく楽しい世の中になりますように。
Our organization, the Japan Religious Committee for World Federation, participated in a Japan-America Religion Conference, which was held at St. John's Cathedral in New York City in May 29th and 30th of 1982. On our way back to Japan, we stopped at Pearl Harbor to offer prayers for peace and consolation. And this year marks our 34th year since we have been invited to offer our peace prayers at the Arizona Memorial. This year also commemorates the 70th anniversary of the end of the Pacific War, and we feel it is an appropriate time to reflect on the meaning of peace as well as war. As we all gather here today in Pearl Harbor in the name of world peace to reflect on how our countries were enemies at one point in time, we are all also able to affirm proudly to the world that thanks to many changes that came with the passage of time, today we are all here as good friends and old colleagues who have deep consideration, respect, and love for one another. World peace appears to be quite fragile these days due to threatening events that occur time and again. This is why now is the time that humanity must deeply contemplate ways to bring about lasting peace more than ever, for the sake of all mankind. The absence of war alone is not enough to bring about peace in the world. True peace can only be achieved by actively promoting peace. As mankind and animals coexist in nature, likewise, all human beings must also learn to live with one another in harmony and prosperity, in the spirit of mutual love and respect, for that is the only path that will lead to world salvation. Today, we are all here to rally together and share the wisdom that was passed down to us from our forebears. As people of religion and faith, each one of us vows to do everything in our power to bring about true world peace and happiness for humanity. Let us all pray together at this time. May true world peace prevail, and may all of mankind know true happiness. And may we all learn to live together in this home that we share, and may our planet become a bright place that is full of compassion, love, and sincerity for all.
ありがとうございました。マハロ。
Thank you very much.
Today's National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day commemoration is co-hosted, as it has been since 2005, by the National Park Service and the United States Navy. Here to share an official welcome is Jacqueline Ashwell, Superintendent of World War II Valor in the Pacific National Monument, followed by Rear Admiral John Fuller, Commander of Navy Region Hawaii and Naval Service Group Middle Pacific. Superintendent Ashwell.
Aloha. As the Superintendent of World War II Valor in the Pacific National Monument, home of the USS Arizona Memorial, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day commemoration, marking the 74th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor and Oahu. We have many dignitaries with us today, and I'd like to welcome a few of them. The Honorable David Ige, Governor, State of Hawaii. The Honorable Doug Ducey, Governor, State of Arizona. A delegation from India to include the Honorable Manohar Parrikar, Minister of Defense. The Honorable Arun Singh, Ambassador of India to the United States. And Vice Admiral Sunil Lamba, Commanding-in-Chief of the Southern Naval Command. With us also are Admiral Harry Harris, Commander, U.S. Pacific Command. Admiral Richard Mackey. Admiral Ron Slatiper. Lieutenant General John Tulin. Lieutenant General Anthony Crutchfield. Lieutenant General Henry Stackpole. The Honorable Kirk Caldwell, Mayor of the City and County of Honolulu. The Honorable Tamio Mori, Mayor of Nagaoka, Japan. In addition, we welcome members of the Consular Corps, members of the Senior Executive Service, and all other flag and general officers, elected and appointed officials, business and community leaders. For those of us within the National Park Service who have the honor of being duty stationed at Pearl Harbor, we take seriously our commitment as stewards of the past and protectors of the icons that are paragons of the American experience. Today, we honor the memory of those who gave that last full measure and to those who survived. Here among us are veterans from both sides of this battle who meet here today in harmony to remember a day of that war. For 70 years, we have been at peace with Japan, but our path to reconciliation was not easily traveled. The pain and savagery of that conflict still haunts us. But here, we dedicate ourselves to renewed promise to continue to move forward in the process of engagement and peace. Thank you.
On behalf of the Navy, it is my distinct honor to welcome back the Pearl Harbor survivors and their families. We welcome all World War II veterans and all other military veterans, both active duty and retired. And we are especially pleased to welcome our guests from Japan, who have come here to help us continue the path to reconciliation. We all remain committed to peace in the Pacific through continued stability. Hawaii is the heartbeat of the nation's rebalance to Indo-Asia Pacific. Here in Hawaii, we understand the value and importance of family ohana and the aloha spirit. Here, people from all backgrounds and beliefs work together to reconcile differences, reach mutual understanding, and work together for a better world. The brave young men who lost their lives December 7th, 1941 in Pearl Harbor did not see the freedom, prosperity, and justice they earned for us. Today, at this ceremony, we demonstrate that the lives lost on December 7th and in World War II were not lost in vain. We show our deep appreciation. We know and we remember that those who sacrificed so much in World War II brought the world a greater freedom, more democracy, and a pathway to reconciliation and peace. Today, we are very fortunate to have Admiral Harris with us, a leader dedicated to building relationships, opening dialogue, maintaining readiness to defend the homeland and support our allies. He is a diplomat and a warfighter. Admiral Harris led and supported major operations worldwide, including Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and Odyssey Dawn recently in Libya. 1 year ago today, he addressed us as the commander of the United States Pacific Fleet. Today, he leads men and women serving in an area of responsibility encompassing half the world's surface, across the vast Pacific, from the United States West Coast to the western border of India from east to west, and from the Arctic to the Antarctic from north to south. He leads all U.S. joint forces in this region, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And he leads our nation's rebalance to the Indo-Asia Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome Commander, United States Pacific Command, Admiral Harry B. Harris, Jr.
Anytime you follow John Fuller to the podium, you either need to adjust your microphone or stand up on a step stool. So I notice here's a watch. There's probably a lesson there. So I'll try to abide by the time. So thanks, John, for that great introduction. We all appreciate your leadership here as a Navy Region Commander, as well as your stewardship of this base. So ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Before I start, let's give another round of applause to the choir. They were awesome. So let me begin by saying that I bring to you the best wishes of Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus. SecNav sends his regrets that he could not attend today's ceremony, and he couldn't find someone better to fill in for him. So just close your eyes and visualize. Pretend I'm taller, grayer, with the steely blue eyes of a service warrior and the eloquence of a seasoned diplomat, and we'll be okay. Though I'll probably say half as many words in twice the time due to my Tennessee drawl. So as I look around today, I realize that there are so many distinguished guests that I could spend the entire speech trying to acknowledge everyone. Since I can't do that, let me take a moment to recognize a few of the honored attendees, as the Superintendent of the Park Service did a few moments ago. So for state and city leaders, Governors Ige and Ducey, Mayor Caldwell, Mayor Maury, and all of our guests from abroad, Defense Minister Parikar, Ambassador Singh, and a visiting delegation from India, esteemed members of our consular and diplomatic corps, fellow flag and general officers, Fox Sports executives, Mr. Eric Shanks and Larry Jones, thank you for highlighting our veterans, past and present, by telling such great stories during this weekend's sports broadcasts, leaders of the National Park Service, and most of all, a special welcome to the greatest generation, our World War II veterans and Pearl Harbor survivors, to whom we owe an immeasurable debt for their heroic efforts and why we are all here today. So December 7th is always a special day of meaning for me personally. 74 years ago, my dad was an enlisted sailor on the aircraft carrier USS Lexington, which was usually docked at Fort Island just behind me. Just a few days before Pearl Harbor was attacked, on a quiet Sunday morning, not unlike this Monday morning, our aircraft carriers had pulled out of Pearl Harbor. As you can imagine, growing up, I listened to my dad's stories of duty, honor, and courage, and my dad and so many from the greatest generation are no longer with us, but I can still hear their stories. These stories taught me the importance of defending freedom and serving our nation. and this inspired me down a path to do just that. So there were a lot of heroes that day and unimaginable destruction. Just look across the harbor at the USS Missouri and consider the scale of many ships just like that berthed along Ford Island. As we gaze out at the Arizona Memorial and just beyond it, the Oklahoma Memorial, and just beyond that, the Utah Memorial, we recall the heavy price paid 74 years ago. 21 vessels, including 8 of our frontline battleships, sunk or damaged. 170 planes destroyed, more than 2,400 dead, 1,200 wounded, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and civilians. A day of infamy and a day of warning that must forever remain burned into the American consciousness. That's why we evoke the motto of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association. Remember Pearl Harbor, keep America alert. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Sage advice from those who speak firsthand of the events of December 7th and the need for America to never be caught flat-footed again. And even though these events happened a long time ago, threats to our very way of life remain today. Today, the world is still a dangerous place. It demands that we be ready 24/7 to meet any threat to our American citizens, our allies and partners, and our national interests. George Washington once said, "To be prepared for war is one of the most effectual means of preserving peace." We in the Pacific Command believe that, and we live those words every day. That's why the 360,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and DoD civilians that comprise the Pacific Command remain vigilant and ready to fight tonight if we're called upon. For 74 years, we've remembered Pearl Harbor. We've remained vigilant, and today's armed forces are ready to answer the alarm bell. But to be sure, we're working to keep that alarm bell from sounding in the first place by advancing America's current strategic rebalance to the Indo-Asia Pacific, an initiative designed to maintain stability, prosperity, and peace throughout the region. Our strategic rebalance is centered on enhancing our already strong alliances with Japan and South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, and Thailand, and it reminds us of the decades-long friendship that has connected Japan and the United States, our defense forces, and our people. We began to walk the pathway of reconciliation 70 years ago on board the USS Missouri. The Pacific Ocean, once a tableau of brutal warfare, is now a stable region where former enemies are now close allies. Today, we work side by side with our allies, mutually committed to security throughout the region that drives the global economy. We enjoy the fruits of these prosperous times because of the seeds sown by the men and women who sacrificed so much right here 74 years ago. Today, the United States and our allies are working with new partners like India and many other nations to maintain peace and security in the region. This is all possible because of the world-changing actions of those who stood their ground here in Hawaii on that fateful day, 1941, and those who subsequently carried the battle flag to far-off lands in defense of liberty. So as we look across the majestic Arizona Memorial behind us, we remember that this is a final resting place of more than 1,100 sailors and Marines who made the ultimate sacrifice. They are the guardian angels of our nation, and here they will never be forgotten. Today and for every tomorrow, we owe a debt to the men and women who gave their full measure of devotion on that December 7th morning and throughout World War II. Time will not dim their glory or their deeds and their legacies they left behind. From the ashes of war, a rules-based system of international laws was built that has kept the peace in the Indo-Asia Pacific for decades. Today, as I look around this audience, it reminds me that the United States, Japan, Australia, South Korea, the Philippines, and India, and so many other like-minded nations are working together in this rules-based security architecture to maintain peace through strength. As we commemorate this day, let us rededicate ourselves to the delivering to future generations the same gift of security and peace that was purchased for us by those who sacrificed so much in defense of our freedom 7 decades ago. May God bless those Pearl Harbor survivors and World War II veterans who serve as living tributes to all the things that make our nation great. May God bless those who followed in their wake the men and women of our joint armed forces, every one of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, past and present, who step forward to defend our nation. May God bless the families of those who serve here in this beautiful state of Hawaii, and may God bless the United States of America, which will forever be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to present to you now the Chief Historian for World War II Valor in the Pacific Memorial, Daniel Martinez. Daniel?
Good morning and aloha. I have the privilege this morning to introduce our keynote speaker. David Michael Kennedy was born July 22nd, 1941 in Seattle, Washington. He is an American Pulitzer Prize-winning historian specializing in American history. He is the recipient of the Donald J. McLaughlin Professor of History Emeritus Award at Stanford University and the former director of the Bill Lane Center for the American West. Professor Kennedy's scholarship is notable for its integration of economic analysis, cultural analysis with social history and political history. A review of his award-winning book was done by the Washington Post. It read, "Freedom from Fear tells the story of the United States during the Great Depression and the greater war that followed in its retching drama with no shining heroes and more suffering than triumph. Yet Kennedy is too good a historian and too sensitive a writer to fall for a single-minded, scathing perspective. His title, borrowed from the famous speech by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, affirms a sense of victory that most Americans felt after the 15 years of pain were over. After all, they had survived the worst economic slump in U.S. history and vanquished a horrific set of enemies. To write about the fires of change with grace, empathy, and common sense is an achievement indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce this year's keynote speaker, Dr. David Kennedy, recipient of the Pulitzer Prize.
Thank you, Daniel. I want to talk this morning about memory. I want to talk about the memories associated with this place and this date. I have none of my own. I was a not quite 5-month-old infant in Seattle, Washington, when Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941. But I can say that the very first memory that I can cull from those scattered shards of random childhood remembrances and accurately locate in historical time is not unrelated to this place and that day of infamy. It came nearly 4 years later on VJ Day, August 15, 1945. That date is still vivid in my mind. All the sirens and bells in my hometown of Seattle screeched and pealed to celebrate Emperor Hirohito's announcement of Japan's intention to surrender, which was formally accepted in Tokyo Bay aboard the USS Missouri some 2 weeks later on September 2nd, 1945. I'll have more to say about that end-of-war moment and about that surrender ceremony on the deck of BB-63, the Mighty Mo, just across the water behind me in just a moment. Also behind me lies another renowned battleship, BB-39, the USS Arizona. Its keel was laid on March 16, 1914 in the Brooklyn Navy Yard with Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin D. Roosevelt in attendance. It was commissioned in 1916 and named for the 48th and most recent state to join the Union. It escorted Woodrow Wilson to the Paris peace talks after World War I. And on December 7, 1941, Japanese bombs sent it to the bottom here in Pearl Harbor. The Arizona lies here still. It is the final resting place for nearly 1,000 brave Americans. It's a monument to the valor of those who fought and died here and fought and died throughout the Pacific Theater in the months and years that followed. And it is no less a monument to the folly and tragedy of war itself. In fact, the bloody conflict that began here 74 years ago today may eventually go down in history as one of the most tragic episodes in a long and sorry history of violent human contestation. Among the people who understood its folly and tragedy well before December 7, 1941, was, ironically enough, the man eventually tasked with planning the Pearl Harbor attack, the commander of the Imperial Japanese Navy, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. As early as September 1940, as relations between Japan and the United States were beginning to go seriously sour, Yamamoto advised his prime minister, Fumimaro Konoye, as follows: "If I am told to fight, regardless of the consequences, I shall run wild for the first 6 months or a year. But I have utterly no confidence for the second or third year. I hope that you will endeavor to avoid a Japanese-American war." Japanese leaders, including Prime Minister Konoye, made desperate efforts in late 1941 to reach some kind of negotiated settlement with the Americans. And even when Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's task force sortied from the Kurile Islands on 26 November 1941 on their way to attack this place, Nagumo's orders included a direct instruction from Yamamoto that, quote, "In the event an agreement is reached in the negotiations with the United States, the task force will immediately return to Japan." On the American side, as late as December 6, 1941, just as Nagumo's 6 aircraft carriers were approaching their launch points north of Oahu, President Roosevelt sent one last message to Emperor Hirohito, seeking to find some modus vivendi that would head off war. But it was, of course, in vain. And at 7:53 a.m. the following morning, the Japanese Air Commander, Mitsuo Fuchida, at the head of his 350 plane squadron, sighted land below and shouted, "Tora, Tora, Tora," and the war came. When it ended, 111,606 Americans had given the last full measure of devotion for their country throughout the Pacific Theater. More than 1 million Japanese had perished. Both sides knew gallantry and valor and courage, one of those universal facts about warfare that President Harry Truman understood well when he visited the Mexican National Monument at Chapultepec, where 6 young cadets, Los Niños, had died in 1847, fighting the Yankee invader. When criticized for visiting that Mexican place of honor, President Truman said, "Bravery does not belong to any one country. I respect bravery anywhere I see it." Among the countless brave warriors here on that day, 74 years ago, was Doris Miller. Because he was African American, he was barred from duty in the combat arm of his segregated service. He was a messman 3rd class on the USS West Virginia, serving as a kitchen hand and steward to the ship's officers. But when the Japanese attacked, he manned a .50 caliber machine gun and fired away until his ammunition was exhausted. Admiral Chester Nimitz later decorated Miller with the Navy Cross. And not long thereafter, 26-year-old Messman Miller was killed in action in the far western Pacific. I had occasion recently to visit Chester Nimitz' burial site in the Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno, California. At a Veterans Day ceremony there last month, I met another Pacific Theater veteran, a recipient of the Silver Star, whose story contains powerful lessons about war and remembrance and about what kind of people we are. Frank Masuoka was a Nisei, or second generation, native-born Japanese American, and hence a United States citizen. In 1941, he and his family were working in the hop fields of Sonoma County in Northern California. When 17-year-old Frank heard the news about the attack on Pearl Harbor, he tried to volunteer for the United States Armed Forces, but was rejected because he was Japanese. With his family, along with 120,000 other West Coast Japanese, he submitted to the indignity, the insult, the crime of forced removal and internment, in his case, at Camp Grenada in Colorado. From there, along with his brother, Frank, he tried again to join the armed forces, this time successfully. After basic training with the segregated, all-Japanese 442nd Regimental Combat Team, Frank Masuoka was detached from the 442nd, with whom his brother remained and died, and seconded to the 7th Marines in the Pacific as a translator and interpreter. Masuoka found himself with the 7th Marines on the island of Okinawa on August 16, 1945, the day after Emperor Hirohito's declaration of surrender. The god-awful battle for Okinawa had officially ended 2 months earlier, leaving some 12,000 Americans and more than 70,000 Japanese dead. But pockets of Japanese holdouts still dotted the island, many holed up in caves and bunkers dug into the mountainsides. An undetermined number of Japanese soldiers had taken refuge in one such cave, and it fell to Masuoka's unit to inform them that the emperor had declared surrender and the war was over. A Marine unit went in to deliver the message and was promptly wiped out to a man. A second unit went in. The Japanese killed them as well. At that point, Frank Masuoka removed his helmet so that his Japanese racial identity was clearly visible, disarmed himself, and went alone into the cave. And he emerged later with 600 surrendering Japanese troops. Now at age 92, Captain Masuoka spoke at that Veterans Day ceremony last month in California. You could have heard the proverbial pin drop as he told his tale. But he talked not only of combat and fear and courage under fire, he talked mostly about his life after the war. Not so much about fighting, but about what he had fought to secure. He talked about his two sons, who had served 20 and 30 years respectively in the United States Armed Forces. He talked of his many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He dwelled not on the indignity of internment or the harrowing drama of combat, but of the long and fulfilling life he had led as a civilian and the love he felt for his country. His remarks about his life after the war as a civilian reminded me of another man's enduring words from World War II. Words from the prayer that Franklin Roosevelt offered over the radio on D-Day, June 6, 1944, when he asked for a blessing on the men then going ashore on the beaches of Normandy. He said, "For these men are lately drawn from the ways of peace. They fight not for the lust of conquest, they fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate. They fight to let justice arise and tolerance and goodwill among all thy people. They yearn but for the end of battle, for their return to the haven of home." Now, Frank Masuoka's story also put me in mind of another young man who, like Masuoka, had volunteered for service in World War II and is with us still. He had his own brush with death in 1944 when his plane was shot down near the island of Chichijima, north of Iwo Jima. I refer, of course, to the 41st President of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush. Masuoko's words and Franklin Roosevelt's words in 1944 reminded me of President Bush's remarks in this very place 24 years ago to the day. Recollecting his war experience, President Bush said, "Well, let me tell you how I feel. I have no rancor in my heart toward Germany or Japan, none at all. And I hope in spite of the loss that you have none in yours. This is not a time for recrimination. World War II is over," President Bush said. "It is history. We won. We crushed totalitarianism. And when that was done, we helped our enemies give birth to democracies. We reached out, both in Europe and in Asia. We made our enemies our friends, and we healed their wounds, and in the process, we lifted ourselves up. No," he said, "just speaking for one guy, I have no rancor in my heart. I can still see the faces of the fallen comrades, and I'll bet you can see the faces of your fallen comrades too, or family members. But don't you think they are saying," President Bush concluded, 50 years have passed. Our country is the undisputed leader of the free world, and we are at peace. Don't you think each one of them is saying, I did not die in vain?" One last remembrance, and this one from the deck of the USS Missouri on that September day in 1945, and a remembrance that can perhaps remind us that we live in a country and have a history of which we should rightly be proud. This last remark comes from the pen of Toshikazu Kaze. He was a young Japanese diplomat who stood stiffly in formal attire under the sun on the Missouri's deck on that day and did his best to swallow his humiliation and anguish as he witnessed his superiors put their signatures to the surrender document under the eyes of the victors. Kaze heard Douglas MacArthur express the hope that from this solemn occasion, a better world shall emerge, a world founded on faith and understanding. And Kaze wondered, in his own words, whether it would have been possible for us, had we been victorious, to embrace the vanquished with a similar magnanimity. For us, it was more than merely possible. It was our destiny and our character to be magnanimous in victory. That magnanimity has deep roots in American history. From George Washington's alteration of the customary rules of warfare in his decree that British prisoners of war should be treated humanely in the American Revolution, to Ulysses Grant's order at Appomattox Courthouse that Robert E. Lee's troops should keep their horses for the spring planting, and to Abraham Lincoln's ringing declaration in his second inaugural address that we should have malice toward none and charity for all as we bound up the nation's wounds, and in Lincoln's words, did all we can to achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace with all nations. And now, even as we rightly remember sacrifice and death and rightly honor courage and valor, let us remember and honor too the better and more generous angels of our nature as a people. Mahalo.
Thank you, Professor Kennedy. Today we honor heroes, military and civilians, who lost their lives on December 7th, 1941. And these wreaths represent an expression of our gratitude and a symbol of our unending appreciation for their service and sacrifice. This morning, we will place a wreath in honor of the state of Hawaii, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. And presenting the wreaths will be wounded warriors and National Park Service Rangers who are veterans from each service. This formation represents our past and present. It honors those who fought in the name of freedom 74 years ago and recognizes our wounded warriors, veterans, and current active duty members who continue to serve our country selflessly. These wreaths also represent hope that our future generations may never forget the many sacrifices that took place and continue to take place every day. The bell you will hear is from the USS Bugala, SS-331, a Buleo-class diesel submarine. USS Bugala was launched in 1944 and served in the Pacific during World War II. The state of Hawaii. On that fateful morning, 49 civilians lost their lives on December 7th. The people of the Hawaiian Islands made great sacrifices and contributions to the war effort in the Pacific. As a base for all of the services, the territory of Hawaii and her citizens played a major role in what became known as the greatest salvage and repair effort ever known, by quickly restoring the majority of the damaged ships and expediting their return to the fleet. Her citizens opened their homes and businesses to servicemen stationed in Hawaii and to those returning from war patrols. Today, the state of Hawaii remains a strategic and welcoming home port for our military, continuing to offer aloha to all. Representing the state of Hawaii, our National Park Service Ranger Lev Usita and Wounded Warrior Senior Chief Gideon Mateo Alip. Lev Musita is from Kaneohe, Hawaii, and is currently a security guard with the Visitor and Resource Protection Division. He was a Fleet Marine Force Navy corpsman, deploying to Iraq as with 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines in 2004, and to Afghanistan, working in the operating room at Camp Bastion in Helmand Province in 2009. Senior Chief Aviation Structural Mechanic Gidson Mateo Kakua Alip was born in Kealakekua, Hawaii. During his 17 years of service, he endured 5 tours to Afghanistan and deployments to Africa, Italy, Japan, and Diego Garcia. Senior Chief is enrolled as a wounded warrior at the Joint Base and will medically retire in March of 2016. Will our civilian survivors and witnesses please stand as able? Civilian survivors and witnesses, please be seated. United States Army. Representing the United States Army and the 233 Army and Army Air Corps personnel who lost their lives that day, our National Park Service Ranger Lyle Eagle and Wounded Warrior Sergeant First Class Satula J. Amoa. Lyle Eagle is from Cheyenne, Wyoming. He's currently a park ranger at the Honouliuli National Monument in West Oahu. He enlisted in the Army in 2007 as an infantryman and served with the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, for 4 years. He was medically discharged in 2011. Sergeant First Class Amoa is from American Samoa and enlisted in the Army in March of 2003, again as an infantryman. He has been in the Army for 12 years and completed 2 deployments to Iraq. Sergeant Amoa is currently serving as a platoon sergeant with the Warrior Transition Battalion, Hawaii. Will our Army veterans please stand as able? Army veterans, please be seated. United States Marine Corps. Many may not realize until visiting the USS Arizona Memorial that a Marine detachment made up part of the ship's company. A total of 109 Marines lost their lives that day. 105 perished aboard ships in Pearl Harbor, and 4 were killed in action at the Eva Mooring Mast Field. Representing the Marines who gave their last full measure of devotion on December 7th, our National Park Service Ranger Ernest Aycock and Wounded Warrior Sergeant Eric Melton. Ernest Aycock is from Austin, Texas, and is currently a security guard with the Visitor and Resource Protection Division. He joined the Marine Corps in May of 1972. He participated in Operation Golden Dragons in Korea, and in 1974, he was assigned in Vietnam to evacuate troops and villagers. Ernest retired after 21 years of honorable service in 1993. Sergeant Eric Melton is from Livonia, Michigan, and served as a SAW gunner, SAW gunner, with the 1st Battalion, 6th Marines in Marja, Afghanistan. He earned the position of fire team and squad leader before transferring to the 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines, Okinawa, Japan. Sergeant Melton is now currently a recovering service member with the Wounded Warriors Battalion, West. Will our Marine Corps veterans please stand as able? Marine Corps veterans, please be seated. Thank you. United States Navy. Representing the United States Navy and the 1,999 sailors who lost their lives during the attacks on Pearl Harbor and Kaneohe Naval Air Station are National Park Service Ranger Chris Strickland and Wounded Warrior Petty Officer First Class Ryan Shannon. Chris Strickland is from St. Louis, Missouri, and he has been with the National Park Service for 14 years as a maintenance worker. He enlisted in the Navy in 1997 as a gunner's mate and was honorably discharged in 2001. Petty Officer Shannon is from Morris, Illinois. He enlisted in the Navy in 2008 as a submarine radio man and deployed aboard USS Pasadena to the Western Pacific in 2010. Due to injuries sustained while on active duty, he converted to information technologist and was enrolled in the Navy Wounded Warrior Safe Harbor, Pearl Harbor chapter. Will our Navy veterans please stand as able? Navy veterans, please be seated. United States Air Force. Though not yet a service in 1941, the United States Air Force was formerly referred to as our Army Air Corps. Here on Oahu, it was also known as the Hawaiian Air Force. This aviation branch was built upon the spirit of men like that of Lieutenants Ken Taylor and George Welsh, who, in spite of danger, scrambled to their aircraft parked at Haleiwa Field and took off to brave the skies against incredible odds. Representing the Air Force are National Park Service Ranger Stephen Kamkam and Wounded Warrior Master Sergeant Christopher Wiggins. Stephen is from Salinas, California, and is currently a park ranger for the Interpretation and Education Division. He served as a commander of Detachment 1, 82nd Communications Support Squadron in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, during operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. He separated from the Air Force after 10 years of service in 2007. Air Force Master Sergeant Wiggins is from Derby, Kansas, and has deployed 5 times in support of Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, providing close air support at all echelons. He is currently serving as the Air Support Operations Center Chief of Weapons and Tactics for the 5th Air Support Operations Squadron. Will our Air Force veterans please stand as able? Air Force veterans, please be seated. United States Coast Guard. At the time of the attack, U.S. Coast Guard vessels in Hawaii were all stationed in Honolulu. At 6:45 a.m., the patrol craft Tiger intercepted a dispatch from the USS Ward that claimed destruction of a submarine. Later, Tiger herself came under enemy fire, but fortunately did not suffer any casualties. Representing the United States Coast Guard is National Park Service Ranger Casey Scott and Wounded Warrior First Class Christopher Summers. Casey is from Wiesbaden, Germany, and is currently a protection ranger with the Visitor and Resource Protection Division. He enlisted in the Coast Guard of May of 2010 and served as a bosun's mate. He's been part of a small boat operation for search and rescue, law enforcement, and anti-terrorism force protection in Washington, California, and Kuwait. Petty Officer First Class Christopher Summers is from LaGrange, Illinois, and is a bosun's mate in the United States Coast Guard. He conducted drug and migrant interdiction missions and search and rescue operations and served aboard the Coast Guard cutter Eagle. Christopher is currently serving on active duty with the 14th District Department of Waterways. Will our Coast Guard veterans please stand as able? Coast Guard veterans, please be seated. Wreath presenters, thank you. And would all wounded warriors in the audience please stand as able and be recognized? Wounded warriors. Now we're going to do something a little different right now. Would all Pearl Harbor survivors and other World War II veterans please remain seated so we can show honors to you? Would everyone else please stand and join me in expressing our appreciation to those heroes who bravely stood fast? It is because of you, gentlemen, and others like you that we enjoy freedom and liberty in this great country. A grateful nation applauds you today, as everyone did here as well. And please be seated. Thank you. We hope with the weather that it's anticipated that a 1944 North American SNJ-5B vintage aircraft flown by Bruce Mays of the Pacific Warbirds in honor of those who gave their lives in the defense of their country here 74 years ago today. This SNJ, also known as a T-6 Texan, has the paint scheme from the USS Saratoga CV-3, which was based in Pearl Harbor in '41, but was in San Diego during the September 7th attack. And we may see it, we may not, we'll see. Many organizations have donated wreaths today and are listed in your program. And these wreaths have been placed on board the USS Arizona Memorial, and a boat will depart at 10:15 for the donors of these wreaths. And we would like to invite all of you to attend the USS Oklahoma Memorial Ceremony at Ford Island today at 1:30. Attendees may ride the shuttle bus at the USS Bowfin, which is over at the park, at no charge. Please alert the shuttle bus attendant that you're attending the Arizona Memorial, and they will depart every 15 minutes. Those, of course, with military base access may drive onto Ford Island to the USS Oklahoma Memorial. So, please rise and remain standing for the benediction, the Marine Corps Rifle Salute, and echo taps by the Pacific Fleet Band. Reverend Dr. Robert P. Lawrence, Vice Chairman of the Board, Battleship Massachusetts Memorial, will now offer the benediction. Reverend Lawrence.
Honored guests, both civilian and military, indeed, all the peace seekers of the world, those whose lives are symbolized by these wreaths before us today. The words have been spoken, the engagements are long past, the treaties are signed, but the final chapter for what we observe here today is found in the words of our God, who says, "My peace I leave unto you." May we seek in our memory of this day a time that provides for us the wisdom in fulfilling your message that can bring hope for future generations. Help us, O God, to remain committed to that spiritual dimension of life that motivates us to remain as a brotherhood of humankind under the fatherhood of Him whose love and grace abideth within each of us. We gather today at this sacred place, resolved in all our efforts for a continuing reconciliation of those engagements of the past that today unite us as a world family. Help us to see that the events of December 7th, 1941 have prompted us to visualize the greater good by living in harmony with one another. Therein lies the promise that we offer to you, O God, as we acknowledge our interdependence among your children, to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly in your steps. Without a sense of peace in our lives, we're at war with ourselves. Today's observance is a personal declaration to that bond with other fellow beings in what we hold in communion and in our common heritage. And history will clearly define when we let God's light can shine through us. May we experience the power of forgiveness on this occasion that would permit a spiritual enlightenment to human value and worth. Teach us anew, O Lord, that the chief goal of our humanness is to be happy, and that we know in our love and respect for others as a united family of the world is that our happiness is derived in the resolutions of conflicts. Renew in our minds, O God, the words of that noted Japanese philosopher, Toyohiko Kagawa, when he writes, "Whosoever will be great among you shall be the servant of all." The untold number that we honor today, O Lord, if in their service they provided a new day in the sacredness of human life, we now express our gratitude. May it not be too distant, O God, when all engagements find their resolution in peace. It's a dream that can become reality when we follow the vision of those assembled here who recognize the value of how they brought about change, a change from what has been to what the world can yet become, a change in attitude dominated by power to an awareness of humility that benefits us and all humankind, a change from the darkness of self-interest to the light of that spirit that permits satisfaction with inclusiveness. For the power of reconciliation is the most significant level of life's maturity. So grant comfort to all who can read the well-known inscription on a cemetery monument that reads, "And is he dead, whose glorious mind lifts thine on high, to live in the beauty that we leave behind is not to die." Peace and God bless you all.
And with that, amen. And salute. Ready to? Thank you, and Bruce Mays made it with his airplane. Please remain standing for the departure of the official party and our honored guests. The National Park Service public programs will begin at 11 a.m. and end at 2 p.m. today. The tickets will be available at the ticket and information counter at the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center. That aircraft is older than a lot of us. Tickets are free and issued on a first-come, first-served basis, commencing at 10 a.m., as I said. And on behalf of the National Park Service and the United States Navy, thank you for attending today's special observance of the 74th anniversary of the attack on Oahu, Pathway to Reconciliation, and for remembering the sacrifice made by those who served here on December 7th, 1941. And for those who are watching our ceremony through our online broadcast, we extend a sincere aloha. And tugboats from the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam will be in the harbor conducting a water tribute, and enjoy some music by the United States Pacific Fleet Band. And by the way, didn't they do a great job? We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and that you will always, always remember Pearl Harbor. Thank you, everybody. This?
I'd be interested in it. No one else is interested.
What, this, the copy?
Yes, sir.
That young lady right over there, that lieutenant, she can have it. She's got a copy for you, too. I got to take this one home.
Understand, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're great.
Okay. Hey, how's it? Good to see you. Hi, man. Thank